A very good evening, dear viewers. Welcome to the news in English here on Rwanda Television. We do hope that you had a productive Wednesday. We'll begin with the headlines. On Wednesday at Village Urugwiro, President Paul Kagame received the President of the Council of Ministers of Togo, His Excellency Faure Essozim Nyansimbe. Economic and international relations analysts note that despite Africa's vast potential, much of it remains underexploited due to persistent challenges such as poor governance and related structural constraints. And on the international scene, the oceanographic vessel ARM Ojunku, gifted by Japan to Mexico in 1978, was deliberately sunk on Wednesday off the coast of Tamapilas. My name is Olive Nete, and it's always a pleasure to have you on board. Now let's take a look at the details. On Wednesday at Village Urugwiro, President Paul Kagame received the President of the Council of Ministers of Togo, Faure Essozim Nyansimbe, for a one-day working visit to Rwanda. The two leaders held talks focusing on the strong and growing relations between the two countries, as well as issues related to peace and stability in the region. Rwanda and Togo already cooperate in various sectors, including trade, diplomacy, and development. His Excellency Faure Essozim Nyansimbe is among senior leaders expected to attend the Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit on Africa. The summit is scheduled to take place in Kigali from the 18th to 21st May 2026 and will focus on shaping Africa's future by harnessing investment in nuclear energy. Two more news. Heads of state and other senior leaders continued arriving in Rwanda on Wednesday to attend the Africa CEO Forum, a gathering of corporate and political leaders in Africa, which will take place over 2 days in Kigali starting Thursday. The first head of state to arrive was Guinea's President Mamadi Doumbouya, who landed in Kigali on Tuesday night. At Kigali International Airport, he was received by the Minister of Defense, Juvenal Marizamonda, alongside other officials and representatives from both countries. On Wednesday, other presidents were also received, including Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was welcomed at the Kigali International Airport by the Minister Juvenal Marizamonda. President Daniel Chapo of Mozambique also arrived on Wednesday and was received at the airport by the Minister of Justice and Attorney General Dr. Emmanuel Ugirashebuja. Another head of state who arrived is His Excellency Brice Oligui Nguema, the President of Gabon, who was welcomed by the Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Dr. Jean-Damascene Bizimana. The President of Mauritania, His Excellency Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, also arrived in Rwanda to attend the Africa CEO Forum. And upon arrival at the Kigali International Airport, he was received by the Minister of Interior, Dr. Vincent Biruta, along with other officials from both Rwanda and Mauritania. In addition to the heads of state, the Secretary General of the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, Louise Mushikiwabo, also arrived in Rwanda. Moving ahead, heads of state and investors find that strong collaboration between governments and investment institutions is essential to achieving Africa's development goals. Adam Squizera has details.
Organizers of the Africa CEO Forum, which will begin this Thursday in Kigali, announced that the event will bring together 7 heads of state and government. The forum is being hosted in Rwanda for the third time. We focus on how trade and investment among Africans can become the primary driver on the continent's development, rather than heavily relying on foreign nations. During the previous edition of the forum, held in Kigali in May 2024, President Paul Kagame, while participating on the panel discussion alongside other African leaders, highlighted some of the key factors that could help Africa achieve the level of development its citizens aspire to.
We can learn from the history that has deprived Africa of so many things, exploited resources of our continent, and the resources benefits went outside rather than benefiting the people of our continent. That's fine. In my view, this should be something we can and should have learned from. What we can do among ourselves, with others, and that can benefit all of us.
This was also reiterated by President William Ruto, who emphasized that Africa possesses all the necessary potential for growth that cooperation between governments and investors can play in driving development.
do we consolidate and integrate our market? You heard Aliko Dangote say that our intra-Africa trade is at 15–16%. We are struggling to get market elsewhere when we are not trading enough with ourselves. Intra-European trade is at 70%. Intra-Asian trade is at 60%. Intra-African trade is at 16%.
May I be blunt and say, do we like each other enough to want to trade amongst each other when we don't even have the rules to make that happen?
Precisely the point why we must fix our AU so that it has what President Kagame said, a loud voice, a clear voice, but also it speaks to the issues that affect us, to make sure that ACFTA has a meaning. If, for example, we had signed AGOA as AU and the US, there was no way Rwanda would have been penalized for refusing to bring in dead people's clothes. So the essence of numbers, if we make the AU a fit-for-purpose organization, and that is our intention. The notes President Kagame handed over to me says we must do 3 things, and which I intend to persuade my colleagues for us to achieve. Number 1, to use AU for our economic diplomacy, to make sure that it speaks to having a unified market in our continent, making sure that the ACFTA works, we have the same.
Adrian Felding explained that the main goal of the forum is to showcase to African investors the opportunities that can emerge through partnerships among themselves, international organizations, and their respective governments.
We need to ensure that that Africa has an answer to that. Our answer that we put forward is shared ownership, which we break down into 3: shared equity, shared infrastructure, and shared frameworks. So our idea here is we want to make Africa, through its private sector, invest in each other, not just in themselves, and make it too integrated to fail. The idea is a unified Africa, but not in only a political union. That's not enough. It's through combined shareholdings, combined skin in the game. That's really it. That will make Africa be able to have a voice that's really listened to and resilience, to build up that resilience in a quite a transactional and turbulent world.
The forum, which is taking place in Rwanda for the 3rd time, will run from May 14th to 15th, 2026, and is expected to attract more than 2,500 participants from across Africa and beyond. Adam Squizera, RwandaTV News.
Now, Rwanda's private sector says hosting the Africa CEO Forum has delivered substantial benefits by creating key continental networking opportunities and fostering engagement with business partners and investors attending the event. Nora Gladys reports.
One of those who has benefited from the Africa CEO Forum is Fabrice Shema, the Chief Executive Officer of Africa Medical Supplier, a company that distributes medicines and medical equipment. He says he will never forget the opportunity he had to meet business partners who signed a financing agreement worth $5 million per year for 5 years, enabling him to expand his business operations into other countries.
We got an opportunity to work with foreign financial institutions called Africa Invest. We met for the first time during Africa CEO Forum in 2019 in Kigali. And our business, let me say it, our relations, ties toward a trade finance facility, which we got from Africa Invest, value of $5 million revolving facility for every year. So we signed a deal for 5 years. That's time. And those people, I met them through a network in the Africa CEO Forum. So for me, I found it very important to understand the value of this meeting, It gives us also opportunity to expand in other markets.
Another company that has benefited is Multilines International, which provides freight and export transportation services. Its Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Julie Mutoni, says she attended the previous 2 editions of the Africa CEO Forum. There, she connected with business partners from Europe and Asia, which significantly expanded the company's business operations.
So I was lucky to meet partners that we still work with, because in logistics, you're supposed to move cargo from Rwanda to anywhere around the world. And if you don't have strategic partners in different countries, you cannot be able to do business globally. So I was able and lucky to meet people that I still work with, and they help me to offer services in countries where I don't have registered offices. And I cannot open offices in other countries over the world, but with partners, I'm able to send cargo. They do customs clearing, they deliver to the client. Basically, they handle the last mile delivery. And during the last CEO Forum, I was very lucky to get a shipment by then because of the guests that wanted to send to buy. They bought made in Rwanda products. Those included made in Rwanda clothes and art crafts. So they liked the products of Rwanda, and I guided them on how to ship. I was able to send them by air. And from that time, they became partners, and they have been referring me to other partners.
The conferences that Rwandan investors say brought them significant benefits were held in Rwanda in 2019, when the Africa CEO Forum was hosted for the first time in the East African region, and again in 2024, further reinforcing Kigali's position as a hub for major international conferences in Africa.
Now, moving ahead, economic and international relations analysts note that despite Africa's vast potential, much of it remains underexploited due to persistent challenges such as weak governance and related structural constraints, which continues to hinder sustainable development aimed at improving the welfare of the continent's population. We do have details.
Africa.
Political expert Dr. Charles Muligande notes that one of the major factors holding back Africa's development is that some leaders still operate under the influence of foreign countries.
One of the biggest factors is that our mindsets have remained colonized and are still conditioned to serve our former colonial masters. After more than 60 years of independence, for most of our countries, we are still facing new forms of dependency, such as economic, cultural, scientific, and technological. One of the major root causes of this problem is ill governance by self-serving leaders who appear to have no clear development vision for their countries and are preoccupied only by their personal interest. Even those that have a vision and a strategic plan, they lack the discipline needed to execute them.
According to economic analysts, the issue of armed groups operating in different parts of Africa is also a major concern facing the continent today as it continues to slow down development. The 2025 Africa Visa Openness Index report by the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission indicates that only 20 out of the 54 African countries have fully opened their borders to visitors from other African nations without requiring visas. The ranking is led by Rwanda and the Gambia in first place, followed by Kenya in third, Benin in fourth, and Ghana in the fifth place. Referring to this report, governance and political expert from the Benin, Muzon Damien, as well as businessman and CEO of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, notes that if Africa seeks economic transformation and improved living conditions for its people, African countries must unite and develop homegrown solutions.
People had the pretext at that time, and they are still using the same pretext today, that for security reasons, they don't want to open up and so forth, as if the terrorists cross the borders or use the airport to come to the countries. Rwanda has opened up since then, to all African. No visa required. You just come with your passport, and then if you question, your thing is stamped. You enter the country. No payment. Has it made Rwanda and the Gambia, which are the first country today on the list of this index, less secure than a country like Sudan, for instance, which is the last on the list because they don't allow people to easily travel to their country. They have all the restrictions. But is Sudan secure today for that as a response to that limitation? I don't think so. So we still have a lot to deal with this situation, to look at the problem from within. And those who have the influence and the power, if there is anything they can do beyond even the border opening. If I have to fly from one African country to another today, I have to pay 3 times the amount I will pay to go to Dubai or to go to other part of the continent, outside the continent. The European who colonized us, they are able to have those European Union today where you can travel to one country and go across all the countries.
Right now, our main job is to make sure the regional markets, they all work. Okay? Once they work, then we can now go to AFCTA. But the AFCTA also, we need to make sure that it works. We cannot have a very, very promising continent and our intra-trade is less than 16%. Okay, so we Africans will have to do it. If we are waiting for foreigners to come and do it, both the development of Africa, it's not going to happen. So it can only happen by us Africans. We must risk our resources and make sure that we lead. Then we will have people who actually trust and believe in Africa, like Patrick, to come and help us to push to the next level.
In May 2025, while attending a summit in Côte d'Ivoire that brought together business leaders, investors, and decision makers from across Africa, President Paul Kagame stated that Africa already possesses everything it needs, provided that existing challenges are addressed.
The frustration here for me is, we talked about how I championed the reform and worked with many other leaders on different subjects. But there is a sense of frustration that what we have agreed, even at a continental level, involving all leaders and how regional communities should work, with the AU at a continental level, is not implemented. The systems are so bureaucratic that you imagine they live in another world. Not this one that is so harsh to us that we need to be doing certain things certain ways without expecting that somebody will always be kind to us, and that's what we depend on almost forever. I'm saying this out of experience. I have lived in my country, and I see many other African countries go through that. So on one hand, there is everything in our hands to do whatever we need to do and benefit from that. On the other, we are expecting that somebody else will come and do what we need for ourselves.
Right.
So how can this go on forever? We have the knowledge, we have the vision, we have everything. We have resources, and we have organizations, we organize, we have. Africa should be far ahead of where we are now.
Experts explain that since some African countries adopted visa-free entry policies for fellow Africans, the move has boosted trade and economic cooperation, especially through the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area agreements. Moving ahead, Alban Bagbin, president of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, and who is also the Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, is in Rwanda on an official visit aimed at strengthening collaboration among African legislatures in combating corruption and advancing good governance. As part of the visit, the Speaker of Ghana's parliament and the delegation accompanying him held discussions with Honorable François-Xavier Kalinda, the President of the Senate of Rwanda, before later meeting with Gertrude Kazarwa, the Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies. Their talks focused on Rwanda's achievements in promoting good governance, transparency and accountability. Both parties reaffirmed their commitment to enhancing cooperation and enhancing best practices in parliamentary governance. And the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption currently operates in 21 African countries. The Speaker of Ghana's Parliament commended Rwanda for its continued progress in the fight against corruption, describing the country as a model from which other African nations can draw valuable lessons.
We see that Rwanda has rather made more gains in utilizing that strong instrument of good governance, that is honest, clean, and accountable governance. And so we approach Rwanda through the Speaker and the President of the Senate, and they happily and graciously accepted to host us. And we're going to learn the experiences of the chapter that has been established here in the Chamber of Deputies in Rwanda. The experiences and how they've managed to influence and impact both government and the people to try to run a very lean, clean, and honest government. We can see the evidence, we can feel the dividends, and we can see the hope in the people of Rwanda that they have a future, and we see the physical development that is going on, and it's one of the best countries for us to come to learn from, and that's why we are here.
To more news, the Ministry of Education has noted that teachers play a vital role in advancing values-based education that promotes peace, helping students develop positive behavior and connect historical lessons to everyday life. In partnership with Aegis Trust, the ministry concluded the Aspire program, an initiative focused on promoting sustainable peace education. The 4-year program focused on training teachers and parents and young people on fostering lasting peace and strengthening unity within the Rwandan society. Sandra Shenge, Program Director at Aegis Trust, explained that the initiative was also integrated into classroom teaching methods and has yielded positive results.
So this program was a 4-year-long program with the objective to create peace agents in communities. So the impact, we managed to reach out to more than 6,000 teachers, parents, and young people, which allowed us to equip them with knowledge and skills for them to take back in the community and be agents of peace. So speaking of the change or impact that was observable through independent evaluations, is that 90% of people, of teachers specifically, were able to apply the knowledge and the skills that were given to them into the classroom. So our mentorship programs allowed us to observe this high level of application of that content in the classroom.
Now, some teachers and young people who participated in the training indicated that the lessons transformed their mindset and enabled them to help others promote peace values. In December 2014, peace and values-based education was officially incorporated into Rwanda's national curriculum from primary through secondary education. Claudette Irere, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, pointed out that teachers have a responsibility to instill a culture of peace among students through continuous dialogue and guidance.
Teachers are expected to guide young people through difficult histories, sensitive discussions, as it was mentioned by several people here, and complex social realities, while at the same time carrying their own personal experiences and responsibilities. This is not easy work. They deserve continued support, training, and partnership. And as the Aspire program concludes, we should not think of this as the end of the work. In many ways, this should be the beginning of a stronger and more sustained phase. The real success of peace education cannot be measured by the lifespan of a project, but by whether these values continue to live in our schools, in our homes, in our communities, and in the choices that we make every day.
Although the Aspire program was concluded, more than 4.5 million students benefited from lessons aimed at building a society founded on peace, unity and reconciliation. Implementing institutions emphasized that efforts will continue to expand the number of trained participants, particularly teachers, while strengthening education against hate speech, especially among young people. Now, this marks the end of tonight's bulletin. Thank you so much, dear viewers, for staying with us. On behalf of the entire news team, we wish you to have a continued productive week. Good night.